Welcome back to another edition of Addiction. Got a minute? It is Friday, March 15th, 2019, and I'm Howie Marlin. Welcome aboard. I'm joined with my partner at arms, Michael Blanchard. Good morning, Michael.
Good
baby.
morning. And when I just remembered it's St. Patrick's Day on Friday, on Sunday. We could have worn green today, and we would have drove those people in the back room crazy.
That would have been a problem.
Because if you wear green, then everything that's green disappears.
Yeah, because we're behind a green screen.
Oh boy, I missed a rare
So it
opportunity.
would have just shown our heads.
Yeah, if you just wear a green suit, you'll just see your beautiful face and your head.
That's fascinating.
All right, so anyway,
we're fascinated by. Do tell me about that.
Yeah.
About what?
The green screen. How does that affect you?
No, I don't want to talk about it. No, we don't need it. I don't need any. Yes, I do need psychoanalysis, but not on the green screen. So.
Well, speaking of psychoanalysis, lucky us, we have Bobbie Lima with us today. Michael, please take it over. You know Bobbie and work with her well.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Howie. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. I just want to say, okay, so this is at the risk of inundating you. And when I first met her, I was scared to death.
In
fact, I'm still scared. I'm still scared to death,
good,
actually.
Good.
Spooky looking woman.
Boy, no, she has a way of piercing your soul, I'll tell you. But, when I got my master's in psychology, I didn't hear too much about the area that you sort of delve in. But I do know that there's a lot of people that don't respond, especially with addiction, when sometimes you don't have a lot of time to get to the root cause of something because someone could overdose tomorrow. There are certain counseling methodologies that, you could ask somebody forever and ever to do stuff, right? And in terms of like months of things, and you are able to get right to someone through a method known as psychodrama or experiential therapy.
Well, something really that you just said was, I pierced the soul. And that just caught me because I believe that the disease is a soul sickness.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's a compliment, that in itself is healing. So thank you. Like we don't even realize what we're saying. And that has to happen in my belief in order to address this sickness.
And you'll be the first to say that what drives you is that deep wound inside that you have very little touch with, but it expresses itself all the time. And so that's where, I've been to, and I'm not trying to insult anybody. If I sit across the table from a therapist and basically the person says, "How are you today?" and tell me about yourself, and all those things are important, but if you're into the 15th session and you're still trying to figure out how you feel, you go into a session with you and it's like you're sitting in a chair, you're imagining you're with your family or your father, and it's right at you, and what it takes you off guard to the point that you actually discover things that you maybe never would have discovered if you were in a traditional therapy setting. And so I suppose it's not for everybody, but most people I talk with say, I want somebody that's going to really be able to help me and get right at it. I don't want to have to go sit there for 52 weeks to be able to discover that, whatever. And so you have a very special gift, and a lot of people on this island have benefited from you, and I want to make sure people know you exist, and you do just an amazing job. So that's all I wanted to say about that. I got that out of the way. Maybe that'll get me one free session with you. But thank you. And I know you've got books, you've got some things that you wanted to talk about today. I know including some recent information around recovery coaching and families. Can you just start off giving us sort of an overview of what you do and what your focus is, and then kind of lead into that point that you wanted to make today, certainly.
Okay, and then I invite both of you to jump in with questions.
Sure.
So I'm a licensed...
What are you doing here? Why did you come by?
Why did I come by? I sort of felt like I was cornered into it. But it's been in my mind, and I value what you are both doing here. I value that. I think I really care about this community. I care about this disease. So to be a part of this, even though it's scary, but now it's not. That's important to get the word out there that I believe in this.
And I'm so grateful that you're here. And forgive me, I was joking when I jumped in like that, but you were going to describe your background, your degrees, and your...
So I come from an alcoholic family, and so I know how I got to work in this field. I get it. And both my parents died from this disease. My father had been drinking and wrapped himself around a telephone pole. And my mother jumped in the bottle after that. He was her world. She put codependency on the map long before it was there. And she literally jumped in the bottle. And I was the youngest of 6. So I was brought up in a single, very, very dysfunctional, very abusive, very chaotic, very, very frightening alcoholic family. So, and then at age 12, I was taken in by foster parents and left Martha's Vineyard. So a lot of my siblings know everybody here. I don't. And so I was, I moved off island, and my dream was always to be a nurse. But because of my own brokenness, my own fear, my own codependency, my own alcoholism, I did not have the courage to follow my dreams. I'm coming up on 33 years sober. And so I was too scared to go to nursing school. So I got married instead. And
that always works.
That always works. And then that started not to work. So I said, well, I'll have a baby. Oh, see, now I have a baby. Now I'm okay. And then the hole in the soul came back. So I had another baby. So that's the gift of my insanity, are those 2 children. Mm-hmm. And I gradually started getting help for myself. First I joined Al-Anon, and I stayed there for 6 years. And I thought it was a wonderful place for people. And we visited AA like we were told. And I thought Al-Anon was a great place for those people that needed it. After 6 years, I discovered my own alcoholism, and I discovered that I used Al-Anon and people and jobs to control my drinking. And so I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's for me, 33 years ago. And I went back to school. I followed my dream, and I became a nurse at Mass General. And I wanted to do detox nursing, but everybody said, oh, no, that's too depressing. You're too good at what you do. And so I did do med-surg nursing for a while, and I loved it, but it wasn't where my heart and soul was. So I went down to Gosnell, and I met with Ray Tomasi, and there was no ad in the paper, and I told him what I wanted. And so he listened, and he said, okay, he said, so you've never done detox nursing in your life. We're not advertising for a job. Why should I hire you? And I said, because I would be really good at it.
That's all you need to say.
He hired me. So that was a great experience for me. And I'll never forget one of the nurses saying, when someone come in for the 14th detox, she would start to yell at them and, what's wrong with you? Don't you see what you're doing to your family? And I'm thinking, I think if he knew the answer to that, he wouldn't be here. And I just noticed that approach, and I found it hurtful. I found it shaming. I didn't find any alcoholic that walked into my door at 2 o'clock in the morning as a detox nurse really excited to be there and really loving their life. So I began to get sober myself, and I decided to go back to school, very frightened again. And all the courses were going towards counseling and psychology. So I got my master's in counseling, and then I specialized, I still do, in addictions. I've studied all over the world. That's what I sort of do as a hobby now. I just love it. I think there's always something to learn about this disease, and I want to be able to give this struggling population. I think you need a lot of tools in your toolbox. And a lot of clients come to me. A lot of clients say to me, nobody's ever asked me about my drinking. I can't tell you how many times I hear that. You know, a client came to me for codependency, bruised up, is there alcohol in your house? Is there drinking in your house? They had been being beaten on a regular basis by an alcoholic. Primary care physician, nobody asked that question. So this is my passion. This is what I love. I've worked in, I'm getting old, so I've worked in dual diagnosis units. I've worked in juvenile detention centers out in the middle of Florida. I was the only white person on the campus. Female halfway houses, female juvenile detention centers, adolescent programs, male halfway houses, female halfway houses, drug courts. So I have that whole gamut, and what, after all these years of, let's say, almost 40 years, what I find is, and it's great, that there's a lot of help for the alcoholic and addict. No, there's not enough. But what I'm hurting about is a lack of help for the families and friends.
Let's talk about that. First of all, your background amazed me. I met Bobbie a couple of years ago, and it was kind of interesting because we were at a clinicians gathering, and I made some reference to my early days in counseling back in the 70s and 80s, and talked about experiential theater at the Guggenheim. And she went. So that was, we sort of bonded on that. But let's jump all the way to today and the very thing you just said, family. The relationship, the dynamics are so incredibly important, but for some reason seem to have been omitted.
Exactly.
Why, in your estimation?
I think we got so overwhelmed, and still do, with the magnitude of the active alcoholic and addict and people dying, that it's like, what do we do first here? So that sort of got overlooked. I also think that it's really important. I think if you took a survey of how many helping professionals, doctors, nurses, therapists, school teachers, school counselors, have been, I'm going to go on a leap here, have been impacted by either their own alcoholism or someone they love. And so that's going to kick up in them. When I look at the number of children that are getting diagnosed with ADHD and every other oppositional defiant, if someone had looked into my home and seen that it was alcoholism, all those labels did not serve me. The root cause of the problem was not being addressed. So just like the disease, the family and friends are resistant. Think of the resistance of the alcoholic. So when you ask why, when I ran the family program at the Faulkner Hospital, I would see the clients in the morning, the family in the afternoon, and then I would bring them together. And I would tell the alcoholics and addicts, your family is going to be just as resistant to doing what they need to do to get well as you are. But they're going to be pointing, you need to go to your meetings. You need to be going to your meetings. If I asked them, did you go to an Al-Anon meeting this week like I suggested? Oh, I was so busy. So that dynamic needs to be seen and known. Not a shaming, but they're resistant. No, like we can say, my husband has a mental illness, he's depressed. My daughter's depressed. My daughter's anxious. My daughter has a drug addiction? That just doesn't go down quite as well. So we've come a long way, but there still is a social stigma. But I think it's important not to forget that this isn't a disease that anybody wants.
No, you're right, and I think the healthcare system, like if you have a heart attack, you treat the heart. If you have a kidney infection, you treat the kidney. It's episodic, it's based on the person. You know, you don't look into the person. If somebody comes in with a cardiac arrest, if you get them back out again, you're not really looking so much at the family. You're looking at just fixing that person, and then you send them back from where they came, and then God bless you, now you're going to eat better and exercise, and maybe you won't have another heart attack again. That's kind of the way our system has always been built up. It's around the patient, it's around the client, give them what they need to do, and then they let them go farewell, and hopefully they've learned their lessons and now we'll be able to do it. And you're right, like especially with kids and other people on this island, the home situation is in such tough shape that home environment, that's why we see people come back from rehab time and time again. I talk with many people on the island who have come back from rehab, and they're going back into the exact same situation from whence they left. And they're drinking in the home, this is happening in the home, that's happening. And unless you just completely extract yourself, which you can't in many cases because you depend on these people, and if they're not willing to join you in the recovery process, and I know you've mentioned to me that
that's the movement that I want to see.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here today.
Yeah.
I want to see a movement on this island of getting the families together and getting them well. There was a movie that just recently came out with a young man. He didn't die, but he almost died. It was gut-wrenching heroin accident. I should know the name.
That was The Beautiful Boy.
The Beautiful Boy. The Beautiful
with
Boy.
Steve Carell. That was really,
my daughter and I went.
Yeah.
Hardly anyone was in that movie theater. Most of the people were older. They were grandparents. Down in front of us, there was a mother, a son, and his girlfriend. And that should have been, that movie theater needed to be full of the parents that want to learn about. It was one of the best movies. Have you seen it?
No,
I've
I
ever
wasn't
seen.
aware.
Yeah, it was pretty powerful.
It was very powerful. But we can't even get parents to look at this. Never mind talk about it. But so I get excited about my work, my style. Yes, I started out with Gestalt therapy, experiential, action methods, psychodrama. That's what I do. You can see it. That's my hands. I'm always moving. And I'll put it into action because they're stuck. These people are stuck in their bodies. Bessel van der Kolk says it. The body keeps score. And so, if I get them up, like I had a male client in my office yesterday, and he was talking about guilt. And I was like, oh. So I had him stand up. He was going on and on about the guilt, like I'm getting tired. I said, stand up. So I said, put your hands up. And I just started piling pillows. How you doing? Okay. How you doing? Okay. I can't see. I said, yeah, we can't see you now either. How's it feel? It doesn't feel good like that. Yeah. So what do you want to do about it? Right now, in the here and now, what do you want to do about it? Took 5 minutes. You see? I said, feel it in your body. Feel how heavy that is. Yeah. And all of a sudden, his hands just dropped. That wasn't cognitive.
Not amazing. I am full of goosebumps. I want to say not amazing because for me, it makes absolute sense. The mind-body connection, we've moved from it. Our culture, society started to adopt the medical model because they started to make connections about the way it related to the physicality of the disease. However, in doing that, they moved inadvertently away from the psychodynamic model, the impact of the family. They kind of ignored all that. If you have cancer, unless you have a contagious disease, it's you. It's about you and only you.
Yeah.
You get treatment, you go into rehab, and you get fixed. Meanwhile, the rest of your family is not affected. But this is a contagious disease in very much the same way.
Affects everybody. The family member of the alcoholic and addict gets as sick, oftentimes sicker than the alcoholic or addict, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. The picking up is the end result of the relapse.
Bobbie, just share with me your feelings. The parents of a child who gets sucked down the rabbit hole of addiction or alcohol, do they get affected?
The parents?
Yes.
Unequivocally.
Lightly, a little bit, a lot?
A whole lot.
That's my point. The parents aren't the ones doing the drugs.
But,
it's the child.
But when I say to them, because when they call me about her or him, and we do that, and I say, okay, so I want to see you and your husband first. Oh, well, no, it's a package deal for Bobbie. Either I see the whole family or I don't see the adolescent, because I don't believe in that. I don't believe I can help them.
And the stuff that happens,
Half measures.
Yeah, you have, and the disruption that happens, I can't tell you how many husbands and wives, if they have a child that's using, they have different philosophies on how to fix it. I had a husband who wants to keep enabling and supporting, afraid to be tough in any way because that might throw that child off the deep end and don't want to see them hurt themselves and all of that. The wife, on the other hand, saying, we've been doing this for 10 years, the person's getting worse, we're going broke, we're about ready to get a divorce because we're arguing with each other every day about how to approach it with our son. And they'll come to me and always believe that, because I'm a recovering alcoholic, that I'll always side on the side of enablement and give it time. And I'll be the exact opposite and say, no, sometimes you have to confront the situation because you're going to get more of what you've gotten by allowing the same thing to continue to happen. But that person's sobriety, the kid, is so wrapped into the decisions and the way that those parents handle it, and then the parents are going to get divorced. So I think when you were talking before we came in today about recovery coaches as being a possible arm or group that could go into the family environment and help support the family growth around that.
Just imagine if we had a group of recovery coaches specifically for families. Just think about that, from the 5-year-old kid to the 10-year-old kid to the 15-year-old kid. Recovery coaches for those families. Every single one of my clients their family member needs a recovery coach.
Yeah. Now, I will tell you that there are dramatic movement forward towards this. Right now, there's a class going on for a brand new group of recovery coaches. And Brian Morris is...
There's 17 of them sitting there as we speak over at, in the conference room. Yeah.
So there's movement to get boots on the street. Not only do I agree with you, in my practice, it is all family and always family. And I drip the invitations to people in, but I make it clear you must be part of it. Because without you, the wheel doesn't roll all the way around.
Exactly.
You can't have a big flat spot on the wheel and go down the highway without getting thrown off the highway.
Yeah, and I mean, if you had a diabetic and you've got a couple, and he doesn't want to learn anything about her diabetes or symptoms that he might start to see. So for me, it's the same. It's the same. And again, I'm big on the emotional, mental, and spiritual. The end result of relapse is picking up. The relapse starts long before then, and you have to know what your emotional, mental, and spiritual.
Well, the relapse starts long before that.
Yeah.
That's a book. That's a movie. You're so right. One of the things that happens with the intervention programs that I'm involved in is what's referred to in interventions as case management, where after the intervention itself is helping the families deal with the residual effects of turning somebody around, because it shakes up the whole family. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in that form, it is like a recovery coach helping the family for each of the members negotiate, how they're working through life with this person who is now going to return in a different state. But we need to throw a very large blanket over our country, over our culture, to help re-engineer. Now, we're only two very small people on a very small island. But I want to tell you that we may be having an opportunity. Here on Martha's Vineyard at the high school, the vaping issue is getting out of control. I bring this up because it may offer us, clinicians in the community, not just you and me, but every single one of us, the opportunity to throw that blanket over the whole family. Because when it comes to vaping, we are now crossing over to a legal product which is becoming very popular, and the detrimental effects are, on one camp, undeniable. On the other camp, haven't done research. There's all this misinformation, confusing information. However, the kids are being dealt with for vaping on campus, and it's bringing the families poking their heads up. They're coming to meetings. Now, they may be coming to meetings for the vaping issue, but because this is a family issue,
right, for sure,
you and I
For sure.
And the others in our community may have this opportunity. So there's nothing to be said about this except
That's very exciting.
it is.
It's huge.
We need a springboard. We need
Yeah.
a starting point. We need a
Yeah, anything counts. I want to bring up these books too, because it's like, okay, so we know what the problem is, but see, we all believe, I'm passionate that there's a solution. You know what I mean? We're all sitting here, obviously, because there's a solution. And it's not the same road for everybody. But I find that adults that have trouble in working relationships with their partners, with their coworkers, with their siblings. And so I want to tout Tian Dayton, Tiandayton. She's a psychologist. And she specializes, one of the things she specializes in is adult children of alcoholics.
Can I see the book?
Yeah. So it's the ACOA trauma syndrome. We think of trauma as big trauma, the big T. But there's also little T's, being left home alone, hearing your parents screaming and yelling, hearing and experiencing the feelings of infidelity in a home. That's in your body. Going through a divorce, going through a death. Those little T's impact how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to our partners. And people don't understand. They think they're fine. They don't know why, this isn't working. That, gee, I keep doing the same thing over and over, the patterns. And it's not easy, and we want to go from A to C. I always draw that on the board. We want to go from A, oh yeah, I see it now, I understand it. Yeah, I did my 4th step. I'm good to go, I'm over at C. You missed B. B is hard. B is sad. B is scary. B is funny. B is lots of rage. B is surrender. B is, I don't know. Wow, I don't know how to do this. And I think that's what Gestalt actions experiential methods do. It helps you go from here to here. I think it helps us break down our defenses quicker. Does that make sense?
I'm only laughing because I am so with you. I was trained in it. My father, a practicing clinical psychologist, a teaching psychologist, but very experientially cutting edge. And we did that. As a teenager, I was part of that world. And it had its impact, good and bad. But when we talk about the constructive nature of what Gestalt does and how it brings these emotions right to the surface, it makes connectivity. It brings, it breaks, it doesn't break defenses, it melts defenses.
Right, exactly. It melts. And what I did with that couple yesterday with carrying the guilt, his partner got to see the guilt that he was carrying. And she got to see that that's his, that she's not responsible if he's still carrying the guilt of how he was in that relationship.
Yeah, the method works as well for the person as it does for the observers. Because the people who are observing, if you're in a group setting, you see and you're immediately relating to your own circumstance. So it has like a really cool effect. It ripples out.
Yeah, to use this technique in a group is extremely powerful. Yeah. And it's not for everybody. For me, I knew it fit my personality. I knew it fit my personality. But there's research to back it up that it works. It's very effective with alcoholics and addicts and adult children and codependency. It breaks down, it melts down the defenses.
All of this will be available online. It'll be at the end of the show, we'll show photos and links to these things. There's two other books you want to talk about?
Yeah, so the other one is, most people are probably familiar with Pema Chodron, Taking the Leap, Freeing Ourselves from Old Habits and Old Fears. When somebody asked me the other day, they saw me in the street, they said, do you do cognitive behavioral therapy? I was like, well, Yeah, like that we all do.
It all is, yeah.
We do it all.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? So that's certainly, for me, I have to have a lot of tricks in my toolbox because not everybody's the same. So that book is really good. And then, so the other book is What Matters Most, Living a More Considered Life, by James Hollis. And he's also the author of Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life. Because I do think that recovery, either Al-Anon, AA, NA, Buddhist recovery, it's a developmental. We're always growing and changing. We don't hit a certain place and stop growing and changing. And so he addresses this in a profound way. So I also find that very helpful.
Was something else that you wanted to share with us with vet services?
Oh, yes. And I thank you for picking this up. I just think it's the best kept secret. The Caron Foundation is in Warnersville, Pennsylvania, and it's a pretty well-known addiction treatment. It's like Caron, Hazelton, Betty Ford Center. Those are the three premier treatment centers. So a lot of people have heard of Caron, and but what they hadn't heard of was what is called the Breakthrough Program. It's a 5-day workshop using all experiential and psychodrama and action methods for individuals. And people come from all over the world. I work there as a therapist. So from that, we designed, which wasn't easy and took several years because the military is very particular about who they entrust their veterans with. And we were able to design and get it supported by the veterans. It's called the Veterans Healing Through Connection, a therapeutic couples retreat, free to all current and former service members. We need this more than ever with what's going on in the Middle East, and I have a grandson who's in Syria as we speak. So I wanted to make sure that this message got out there.
We can put that on the Facebook page. We can make sure so people can see the dates or at least connect, because I'm sure it'll be an ongoing effort, hopefully.
Yeah, it's over $2,000. So and it's for couples, and for veterans, and it's free.
And these retreats are coming up in April, June, August, and November.
Yep.
So they are, there are options, and for active duty, reservists, veterans, and retired. I can't thank you enough, and I hope this is the beginning of what will be many more conversations. It takes a village is the biggest understatement of the world. And the fact that we happen to be on this little rock can end up an asset for us. It's up to us clinicians and professionals on the island to step outside the resistance of our comfort areas and look at the opportunities that other clinicians are presenting to help move things forward. We may not have the answers, but we have ideas. Folks like you who were around during a period of extreme growth and new visions in our country. I think the wheels turned around 360 degrees. It's come back to where we may be able to truly benefit from it. I thank you very much. So how can people reach you? bobbie.lima@yahoo.com. And I have a web page, bobbielima.com, all one word. That's my web page. And you can find out more than you need to about me. Okay, and of course that'll be on at the end of the show. Mike, any parting shots?
No, I think we need to get you back. I think people don't understand, experiential. When you say the word experiential, I think the average person versus a therapy session, we need to get into that a little bit more. I'd love to be able to show that in a future show.
I would. I went to the training with Dr. Silverstein when he did IFS, Internal Family Systems, and we had trained with the same guy, Frank Anderson. Love him. So anyway, so it was great, so Charlie knew that I'd done training with him as well. And I said to Charlie afterwards, this was phenomenal, but I would really like to see you do a demonstration.
Yeah, well, maybe we could do that at some point. I'll be a willing
Really
candidate.
simple.
That would be kind of fun.
I think that would be
All right,
really,
maybe we can do
really,
that in a future show.
really
Of
fun.
course.
All right.
No,
Yeah.
this can be easily done. Great. Well, I want to thank Bobbie Lima so much for coming, and it's really been this is really a very exciting conversation. Michael Blanchard, of course, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, on behalf of Bobbie and Michael, Howie Marlin, and we'll see you next time.
Good job.
Bravo.
Good job, dear.
Bravo.
Still scared?
No.
No, seems
No.
pretty good.
If we all drip one drop of sanity back into the bucket of our society, we just might end up filling the pool enough to give the next generation a little safer world. I've got that saying, the best I can do is the best I can do, and I will. This brings us to the end of another edition of Addiction. Got a minute? I wish you warm breezes and clear sailing.